China's already saying they'll be growing people for their organs. See, that's on national news. So what's going to happen when they're 18? You just kill them and take the organ? I mean, what's going to happen here? Like, you're just growing these people.
That's pretty bizarre.
So it's a very, 33 people die, every day waiting for an organ here. So I get it, but I don't get it, because those are, living creatures or living organs, or, how they're doing it. But to say a body is kind of, to say that we're actually going to make a cloned human to harvest his organs, is pretty.
Yeah, it's ethically complicated.
It sends chills up my spine. Why not just grow the organ like we're doing in most places?
Right.
Well, why grow one organ when you can grow a whole body?
That's the way they think.
Yes.
Do you think on some level that they're hoping that if they do enough of this hybridization that they will be able to improve upon whatever we already are? Or in the sense, they don't maybe have a spiritual view of this being anything perfect. They're looking at it like a machine that they can upgrade.
That is absolutely correct. I believe they are trying to, they stumble upon things during, these hybridizations. They stumble upon things that they never knew. And some of those things, I think, may make it to the civilian world to help us heal, but it's a very slow and costly thing, because that's how they make their money. Hey, we discovered this because we were doing this, but we just stumbled upon, this just because we were doing this experiment. And then they'll take that idea and put it in a box and manufacture it and sell it,
One of the extraterrestrial species that Pete Peterson talked about, he called them the simulacs. And they were apparently a little more simian than humans are, but for whatever reason, I guess they had tails that were, the tails could bend, and they made their fingers. They tinkered with their DNA and made their fingers into these long things that could curl like a tail. I'm curious if you ever saw anything like that in your autopsy work.
No, but I have seen feet that were hands, more like hands than feet. And these are very lengthy people, very human, but long-jawed, and very white, and beautiful blue eyes. And they were ectomorphic, with the long, lean bones. And they had these big, they weren't feet, but large hands for feet. And just like our hands, exactly like our hands. But they were feet. And they were not spread out like this. They were spread out really wide.
Wow.
The fingers would go very wide too, in a very small palm for the heel. So I think that was for the weight. And their legs were the reverse. Tibia was backwards, and the femur. So if you switched your joints around, it would go the opposite way, back and up.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And when you say long jawed, you mean that the face it extended down more than ours would?
Yeah, the jawline at least an inch, and it was very thin face. They're very attractive beings.
What were the size of the eyes like compared to ours?
Big almond eyes, twice the size of ours. Smaller nose. They had teeth just like ours, and they had lips. They had no eyebrows, and they had their ears were oval and very small.
So here you are, day after day. You said some days you might have even done multiple specimens in one shift, depending on what the assignment was.
Right.
And we talked in a previous episode about how other genetic teams, you take a sample out of the cadaver, you put it through the wall, other teams start working on it. So how extensive do you think this ET human hybridization is?
In my own opinion, as of today, because I know when I left, they already accomplished it. So I know as of today, they have already probably duplicated 20, 30 species, cloned the extraterrestrial species to learn about them. And they have also mixed their DNA with our DNA. So I'm sure there's at least 20 to 30 hybrid species today that can be confirmed, and that's my opinion and speculation, because I know how many they had about the time I left that they were successful with.
And you mentioned that the tiger human was one type that didn't really work out.
At that time, it did not work out.
But it might have worked out later if they kept working on it.
Yes.
So what would be some other examples of a being that actually had been successfully hybridized? What would we see? Just if you could give me one example to start with.
Well, there is one of the avian extraterrestrials that I've met that are different than Mr. Good's, avians. And this bird-like human looked like a pterodactyl.
Really?
And they're highly intelligent. They're very nice. They're very intuitive. Of course, they're telepathic. They don't really fly, but they have very small wings on the back, like a pterodactyl. So imagine a pterodactyl head, okay, that thin, but with a nice mouth underneath, in a body, in a scaly body.
So the really long mouth with the teeth?
Yeah, like the long face,
okay,
right? And then underneath is a small mouth, underneath the jaw. Like,
oh, wow.
Yes. So they were successful with making a hybrid one of these. And I don't know if they're doing that because it would remind people of like a demon or a dragon or something if they wanted to use it religiously. Because definitely would get a lot of attention if this thing would walk around, downtown. Because it's kind of like, it's an ancient dinosaur, looking creature, but it stands upright and it's scaly and it's green and red scales. And it's the very large scales like a fish, really large scales. Now the back of it has these ridges that go down from, it starts, at the neck all the way down the spine on both sides. And it reminds me of the back of a crocodile's or alligator's spinous process. And you know how they have all those little spikes on the back?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So picture that going all the way down their back, into a very, very small tail near the coccyx bone. And that's what it looked like, and it was beautiful.
And it didn't have clothes?
No.
What was the height?
8 feet.
Wow.
Yeah. I think they made them larger. They were trying to make them like really big. But the species itself was around 6 to 7 feet, and these were, the hybrid ones were around 8 to 10 feet. So for some reason, they were able to use the human DNA to make these, compatible. And I don't know how they did it, by the way.
The species itself, meaning this is not like a hybrid of a human and a pterodactyl. This is some sort of extraterrestrial.
They took the extraterrestrial pterodactyl and cloned it with a human.
Huh.
And they made this other species.
Now, the pterodactyl head, obviously it has the long jaw, but it also has this kind of
yes,
flange on the back.
Very large flange. Absolutely.
So that was there.
Yes.
Weird.
Yeah.
So that sort of sounds like some of the Egyptian things that we see. Like, for example, they have this staff that they're always holding, and it has what looks like a pterodactyl head on that. And I had always speculated that might be a pterodactyl that had popped through a portal or something. Do you think that these pterodactyl-looking beings might have visited the Egyptians and might have been immortalized into that staff? Or
because of the head, it's like a given. You kind of know. It's just like, and the Egyptian, but that's a speculation. I can't say that for that's not my specialty. The Egyptian, but just looking at it, it's like a given. It's like, my goodness, this is so similar to, what they have over there, and it's so ancient too. And they may have been here because I heard a lot in history, about these pterodactyls and things being caught here, and also people visualizing these, and many different, accounts of these these beings there. So I don't know.
Could we discuss another example of one of these hybrid beings that was successful that you got to see? You mentioned a bird-like being, but that it was a bird-like being because it was a pterodactyl. So what would be another one that would jump out as sort of a peculiar example?
Well, not all the beings are, like phantasmical from Earth, insects and stuff like that, like the praying mantises and people and these other, lineages. But the most fascinating ones are the ones that actually look like us. The ones that are just a little bit different. Maybe they're a little bit wider, maybe a little bit taller, but they have, they have a beautiful, they have a face, they have a same digestive system, and they're just so much more advanced than us and conscious, and their brains are always larger for some reason. And that's one thing I want to point out is a lot of the most intelligent, 5-star, humanoid type extraterrestrials is what they really want, because for some reason it's the most compatible with our DNA. I wonder why.
Right.
I wonder why. So with that being said, anytime that comes in, and I've seen these beings before, not only with my experiences on CSETI, but also in the mill labs, that they are the ones, are the easiest to make a hybrid out of. And that's what they have done. And they have hundreds of these hybrids. So if they can get their hands on one, then they're set. It'll work out. And they've been very successful, meaning these beings are living a very lengthy life. And because of the very similar genetic code, they're just more advanced, and they have telepathy. They can do things that we cannot do. They could be used, for good or bad, if they would learn how to program them.
Well, we've had several other insiders talk about Draco reptilians as being a group that now, with our technology and the secret programs, they might only be like 40 years ahead of us in terms of where we're going secretly. And in some ways, we're now actually at parity with them in terms of warfare. So it would appear that our genetic technology is also becoming comparable with them. So they hybridized their DNA with humans, and then they act like they're our gods.
Right.
Like they get to control us or something.
Yes.
How do you see our understanding of a supreme being evolving with this sort of genetic recombination stuff? I don't think it really would make us gods. Do you?
No. I mean, I don't know what your interpretation of God is, but, I don't believe that at all. Because if you have any similar DNA or lineage, that means you can be compatible. You can live peacefully if you're at the level of that other civilization is the problem. They're waiting for us to get to the right that right level, everyone else. And there's many civilizations all around the universe that started the same time we did. And they're so far beyond us because they were not, held back from free energy and anti-gravity, and were not puppeteered,
Right.
And there's going to be a huge meeting soon with the Galactic Federation, and they will take 5 leaders from this planet, and they will tell and bring them to this galactic court and say, why did you do this? And they're going to say, these world leaders, what are you talking about? We didn't do anything. And then in the back behind them is a giant screen projecting everything they know to the Galactic Federation, and they are telling the truth. And then they will see that the 300 major corporations are responsible for the world's leaders and all the stuff they've done to all the people of Earth. So they will come back and grab them.
So you're talking about some kind of potential criminal trial.
Yes, huge trial.
In which lying is impossible.
It's impossible. You will not be able to lie. No one will.
Right. So there's a lot of ethical complications with trying to create designer species, but I think that maybe a deeper level that we could get into is just to say that if there is a supreme being, it's the genetics itself that emanates throughout the